Hey everyone, and welcome back to Down Tune Dissection. Today, we're going to go back to something that we kind of teased at along the way, starting back at the first episode. Chris Doman, I had him back on the show, and we talked Lamb of God, Ashes of the Wake. Man, we had a great conversation just going over basically what this album means to him and what it kind of means to metalcore as a whole starting out. And really, I think we had some interesting words as far as transitioning from thrash metal to metalcore to really where the music industry is now with its perception of metal. So yeah, go ahead and give it a listen.
What did the devil give you for your soul, Tommy?
Well, he taught me to play this here guitar real good.
Oh, son, for that you traded your everlasting soul?
Well, I wouldn't use it.
Hey Chris, welcome back. Welcome back.
Good to be back as always, man. At some point you're just going to make me a co-host or something.
I mean, it's getting to be like that, to be honest, because I know that with the people that we'll hopefully have coming up, I mean, there's definitely some albums we'll be talking about that I want to hear your thoughts on it too. So, maybe we'll have our first threesome, as they say.
Yes. Yes.
And he's excited, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking news. No. But yeah, we have one hell of an album to talk about today. And I don't have the history that you do with it. And so that's kind of interesting because I think we can get, obviously the fanboy reaction from you regarding this album. But we'll have someone looking at it through the eyes of, I've been a fan of metalcore, a good while, but I missed out on this album until just recently, and you actually introduced me to it. It's Lamb of God, Ashes of the Wake, man. Ugh. It's something. We'll say that. I don't want to give any spoilers on any reactions, but, it's actually kind of interesting because it did just, this year is the 15-year anniversary. It was released on August 31st, 2004. So that is just crazy to think about an album that had this type of influence. I mean, it almost seems young, to be honest, 15 years. Like, don't you think that seems kind of young?
It only feels young just because that was during, for people like you and I, that was during our formative years.
True.
That's when we were starting to get exposed to, the bigger concepts of music and pop culture that was not just what our parents threw at us. This was around the time when we were starting to discover other things for ourselves, which,
True.
is actually why I like a lot of those years, minus the personal crap I was dealing with. But,
Yeah.
for everything else, it was great.
And it was a good year for music.
Hell
when you
yes.
Look at,
oh my God.
So we talked about, on the first episode, we went over Meteora and kind of, that was the album, because when I first asked you, you're like, oh yeah, come on the first episode of the show, we'll talk the album that really got you into metal. And you're like, oh, okay, boom, Lamb of God, Ashes of the Wake. And then you kind of thought about it, you're like, well, that was the one that really started everything for me, but beyond, a little bit before that, it was Meteora that kind of turned you down that path. But this is the album that really changed, I think, your perception of metal. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, exactly. Meteora was the record that that pointed me in the direction of heavy music, but this record and Sacrament are what officially made me want to dive in and soak in. Well, actually, that's not true. That's not true. That's only half true. Lamb of God was the first band that I got into after I discovered a little video game that came out in 2006 that I know every single one of you metalheads played, called Guitar Hero 2. This was
the classic.
And this was the game where I discovered Anthrax. This was the game where I discovered Alice in Chains. This was the game where I discovered All That Remains, Shadows Fall, Death Clock, and so Avenged Sevenfold, which will I get the feeling, Ryan, there'll be an episode where we just talk about the Guitar Hero games and like any artist we got into through that. But
We might have to.
and then the biggest one, of course, for me was Lamb of God, because I remember trying to play this fairly simple song called "Laid to Rest," but there was this one effing riff that got me every single time, and it's after when Randy has his giant failure scream. And it goes to like that is, even on a Guitar Hero controller, that's one of the hardest licks to play out of any song, period. But hearing that, do you want to know what was one of the first thing I did?
What's that?
I looked up the actual song and I listened to it over and over again, so I could play that one damn drum lick.
Have it in your memory
during the because I'd only been playing drums for like 3 or 4 years at that point, and hearing what Chris Adler brought to the kit, I was like, wait, you can do that? Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of want to save my praise for his drum work on a specific song that we'll get to.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Okay, I'll be interested to see. There's definitely a lot to say about this album, insofar as, I mean, first of all, Randy's not even a metalhead, so he's just kind of like into the punk rock scene and kind of like, some classic rock here and there, Testament, and, okay, he enjoys Megadeth, he says, but he's come out and said he's not really a metalhead, and he kind of just came across his screaming skills as a joke, so...
Take him to a Bad Brains show, and then his girlfriend's or his wife will be a coat rack while he just jumps in the pit. Yeah.
So it's just kind of funny to see, like, he's like, oh, I'm not even a metalhead, but here he is, like, screaming his head off. So the thing about Ashes of the Wake and being as old as it is, I will just preface this entire conversation by saying I do feel like it shows its age, and I don't have, the nostalgia that you will inevitably have for it. And so I think that Randy, his screams are pretty one-dimensional. He does a great job. And there's another song, a separate song, where I think he just kills it on vocals for what it is. But I think that, a couple years later, some other bands, and again, I need to listen to some of the newer Lamb of God stuff to really see how they've changed and how they've grown. But speaking on this album in particular, I can see how, this makes sense that this is what broke them onto the scene. This is what really pushed metalcore forward alongside, bands such as Killswitch Engage, etc. So I can see that they were laying the groundwork here, but I do feel, 15 years later, it shows its age a little bit. Do you think you can agree on that?
Of course. Like, Ashes of the Wake is a time capsule. And the first sign of that is the simple fact that you look at the lyrics. And we'll get more into it in a little bit, but just if you listen to pretty much anything from the first half of the record, or even the title track, it's all aimed at the Bush administration. Now, sure, if and you can't really compare that to what was going on during the Obama administration. You can't really compare it to what's going on in the Trump administration. It was a time capsule that was meant for 2004, when we as a country were, boy, I'd say in a better place, but that depends on who you ask. And the thing about that is, like, before Lamb of God, there wasn't really a band like them. Like, sure, musically speaking, they're a straight Pantera ripoff. There's not even a debate there. But Pantera, they never really took their lyrics in that serious of a direction. A lot of their lyrics were more personal, more introverted, were more aimed at, don't fuck with me or I'm going to fuck you up. Whereas Lamb of God is like, hey, motherfuckers, take to the streets and take down the man Bush.
and this is what we see wrong with the world too, I think. And that's where, like you said, we'll get to it, but I feel that's where a lot of the Testament and Megadeth influences come in. Whereas we're going to talk about these issues and here's what's right in the world and here's what's wrong and here's how, this makes us feel. And that's also kind of a punk rock influence as well, as, you get some fucking, Beastie Boys or some, Blink 182 type shit going on. It's just this is
okay. Sorry to be that nerd, but that sort of punk rock is more like your NoFX, your Rancid, your Bad Religion,
or like Rage Against the Machine, And so I think as long as you're saying, it's like you said, it's a rage against the man. It's go against what exists and what is known and what we don't like. And Mark Morton, actually, I was reading, has a quote talking about this album. He's like, Randy and I would joke that having a conservative administration in the White House is probably the best thing ever for metal. And it's just like, and I think that can go both ways. As long as you're angry, that's really what matters. But getting into now, we've kind of set the table as far as what this means to you and the genre. But I want to get into what are the songs? I mean, you spoke about, Laid to Rest. That was your obsession there for a second, trying to get the riff down. Mm-hmm. But what are some of these other songs that are standing out to you?
Oh, Jesus.
And why?
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
I mean, you can't just say all of them, Chris. I know the answer is fucking all of them, but you can't just say that.
I can't. But I honestly can give you another 5 tracks that really pushed me as a vocalist, that really pushed me as a songwriter, that really pushed me as a musician. And, starting off with, of course, the quote-unquote big single from the record, that being Now You've Got Something to Die For. Mm-hmm. Oh, dear God. From the moment that riff kicks in, you have to bang your head. You have to bang your head. You can't not bang your head. And I've seen The Lamb of God twice, and every time they start off with a song, they can't even get halfway through saying the title before the rest of the crowd just suddenly screams at the top of their lungs, and they're just the pit starts and everyone's banging, and it's oh yes. Plus, you also have one of the more unique kind of breakdowns that Lamb of God was known for around this time, where they're doing that.
And that's kind of, sorry to interrupt, but that's almost like where they bring the thrash element into it. I feel like it's very, maybe this is hypocrisy, I don't know, but it seems, very Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, is their influences. You can just tell the way they chug and then they break down those short little melodic phrasings, and that's really what, like you said, it's characteristic of this entire album, essentially.
Pretty much. I mean, and that's when you have a lot of those great harmonies that Willie and Mark just love to do with each other, especially on a riff like what Willie famously called what Mark famously called the vomit riff on Hourglass. But that's the beauty of these two guitar players, that they have such a chemistry between each other that they can listen to a vomit riff and figure it out. And that same thing happens on Now You Got Something to Die For, especially once you hit that ending, how it just suddenly drops and you just go slow, headbang, bam, bam, and it's a fun, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the first half of their song Vigil from As the Palaces Burn. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but no. When you get around to that record, just get ready. It's great.
I'm gonna do my homework.
But and then another favorite song of mine off that record is, and this is the one I'm assuming is when you're gonna talk about as far as Chris Adler's drum work. Blood of the Scribe.
No, but that is really good.
Okay, fair enough. But that is for me an example of a prog song that completely works, that has a perfect flow.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it like that, but I actually, now that you pointed out, and almost just the very poetic lyrics too, that does feel very, very proggy. I like that.
And that's also where you got some of my favorite lyrics in the entire record, which is actually during one of the spoken parts, when Randy says, "Chastisement lays you down to sleep, tucks you in with bloody kisses, gifts of nightmares that are sweet." You're just like, oh, the imagery. Oh, that beautiful imagery. And then two more faves real quick. Another song that I will always just lose my shit over is Omerta.
Yes.
Dude.
Yeah, that's one of my top ones. Yes.
That's probably, as far as lyrics goes, that's my favorite. That's my favorite song on the record.
Same. And lyrics, and this was the one I was hinting at earlier as far as the vocals, because I think when he hits that Omerta at the end, I mean, the whole thing's great, but just when he hits that one note, it's like starts off so deep and then he just rises up through the, like, oh, it's so good.
Dude, again,
he kills it on this one, I think, 100%.
This is what has been wrought for 30 pieces of silver, the tongue of men and angels bought. Again, dear Lord, they were on another level of writing on this record.
Yeah.
And especially on this track, where the poetry, especially once you're coming out of the slow section and then you just get that it's like, again, especially live, when that segment kicks in, the lights drop, it's just strobe for like a solid minute, and the instruments are building and building, the drums are going and the guitars are crazy, and you're just like, okay, let's fuck some shit up.
And as someone that's like big into his mob movies with Goodfellas and Godfather, stuff like that, man, it's so fun. It's a different type of lyrical theme, different type of song. Like you said, the writing's on just a different level, and his vocals throughout to keep up. I mean, he's saying some big words. I'm proud of this man. He's saying some big words in here. Cheaply venal, stupidly verbose. Like, what? Avenged Sevenfold ain't writing no lyrics like that, man. Get the hell out of here.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
not in about 15 years, no. But
people are all like Attila and
Emir.
Yeah, no.
Ugh.
The Acacia Strain. Anyway, we're not here to shit on other bands. That's a different episode.
That'll be a different episode. But no, and then for of course, I have to give my final bit of props to the closing track. Remorse is for the dead. I'm just gonna straight up say it. Lamb of God are the best band at writing closing songs. They have not had any record of theirs end on a bad note. Whether it's their Jesus Christ, their first record, New American Gospel. Wow.
Yes.
And they ended on Officer Dickhead Gets a Black Fucking Eye. As the Palaces Burn, they end on Vigil, Ashes of the Wake, Remorse is for the Dead, Sacrament, Beating on Death's Door, Wrath, fucking, no, it's not Resolution, because that's the following record. Reclamation, there we go. And King Me on Resolution. Like, oh my God, they always know how to end a record perfectly. Because, like, and especially with Remorse for the Dead, like, they have one of my favorite trademarks of Lamb of God, where they have this beautiful but kind of haunting clean open that just builds and builds and builds. Mm-hmm. And then once it comes in, smacks you right in the face. And then it ends.
And it's hard to end an album like this on such a high note.
And they do it perfectly, in my opinion.
Because when you're going 100 miles an hour the whole way, to still be able to, because we've talked about, or at least, we talked about before, and I've talked about before, just how the last song of the album matters so much, man. It's your parting words. You don't want to mess that up. And actually, there was, Mark Morton had said, talking about just the 15th anniversary, he kind of went through talking about the tracks. And this was one that, a lot of this was his idea, and he wanted to.
Yep.
He says, "I like albums that end with a strong punctuation, so that has always been very important to me. And the competitive side of me is always shooting to get one of my ideas as the last song of the album, because I think that's a very coveted position." So you can see that that's important. You know, they want that good bookend to the album. They care about how does this finish, whereas a lot of people, I feel like, would just be like, oh, well, you know, we need one more song, so let's just chuck this one on there that we worked on for a little bit. It's like, no, you got to put one of your best songs at the end because you want people to still be listening the whole way through. And because I specifically for me, I like listening to albums that way all the way through. I mean, you know, obviously I'll make playlists and I'll put my music on shuffle, but my preference is to go all the way through. I mean, and talking about the one that I was actually covering, like, this is my favorite song on the album, and it's probably just like, what the shit? Like, why is this one your favorite? And I guess maybe it's tied with Omerta, but it's the Faded Line. And the fact that they're back to the back like that, I freaking love it. You know, it's just so awesome.
Dude.
The Faded Line, man.
Oh my God.
The drum work, this is what I was talking about, because he's just getting it on the double bass and then he's hitting his crash cymbals and like just he has like the perfect timing and phrasing along with Mark on the melodic and the way they're kind of like chugging through it, getting through it. It's just the way that they work together. Well, because I mean, and we haven't even talked about their bassist, John Campbell. He does a great job. I think the mix doesn't do him the best service ever. He kind of disappears in there a little bit. But that is always the difficulty with, you know, older records with bass. But Willie and Mark working together on, especially once they get to that first breakdown, it's like the kind of melodic riff where one of them starts out. I think Mark starts out, right? And then
actually,
Willie joins him. Is it? Okay. So vice versa. Willie starts out, then Mark joins him. Then they kind of go into the next chorus. And I really like actually also the riff for the chorus. And then that final breakdown where it sounds like sirens going off is just, it's like some World War III badass, awesome imagery just from the music, though. It's the phrasing within the music that just gets you like, oh my gosh. And then to go straight into Omerta, which, like we said. Oof. And then One Gun is actually one of the other ones that really stands out to me. Lyrically, I think it's interesting, you know, talking about like what can one gun change. And also I've been watching Mad Men, and it was just the episode where they have the JFK assassination.
Okay, I'm glad we're going to talk about this, because now I'll be completely honest. I wasn't sure what your personal reaction to this track was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I mean, the lyrics are really pointed, and I know what they're getting at, and I mean, it doesn't really affect me because I was like in 4th grade, but you know, so I was like, oh, you know, this doesn't. But I appreciate the lyrics. What they mean is still true. I mean, what you do as a killer, you know, every time you pull the trigger, that means something. It's not a game. You know, war isn't a game, and assassination isn't a game. Like, you know, you look back at the Revolutionary War, and you know, this is not a history podcast, but still, I mean, the guerrilla warfare, that mattered. That changed the whole tide, and it was almost like cheating. We cheated to start this damn country. But what I really like is the riff is so good to open it out. And then the soloing towards the end as well.
Dude.
Like, it's not really what you would expect from this type of album, but when they do pull out those solos, Mark, he has a way to, like, the way he like transfers in and out of the riff into the solo and then back into his chugging riff is, you know, I'm not going to say nobody else can do it because I don't think that's true, but I think he just does it in a really natural way that works really well. And then you're going to, I think, be shocked, but you shouldn't, because even if I don't agree with what this dumbass says, I still really like Ashes of the Wake. I think that whoever this interview is, this guy's an idiot, and he should know what he signed up for. I mean, I'm not saying you should kill civilians either, because if that's really what's happening, and it does happen, and it did happen, and I'm sure it'll happen again, because you can't control everything. But I think that, you know, don't do bad things and then, you know, try to shit on the organization that you joined. So, I don't know. I think it's like a brotherhood thing. You got to stick together. But speaking of Brotherhood, the fact that they get old Megadeth guy and Old Testament guy, which I pulled up their names.
Alex Skolnick and Chris Poland.
See, you always got my back.
I got you.
So
man.
yeah, they're talking about Brotherhood, but it's just so good the way that the guitars all work together, and I always appreciate instrumental songs. We talked about this before as well. I always appreciate a good instrumental song, and this is a good one. It does a good job of kind of giving you a breath before that killer last track. And, I'm actually interested to hear what you think of this one, because I've heard that a lot of people, because it was one of the singles, right? And a lot of people, I think, don't really enjoy it. No, but just the title track in that case then.
Okay, so Ashes of the Wake, it's kind of this song and What I've Become are the two tracks that I tend to skip over the most when I'm listening through, like, because neither one is bad, but the thing about Ashes of the Wake for me is, like, I feel like it's just not varying it up enough, because it feels like it should be moving around a little bit more as far as stylistically, because it starts off with sort of like a more laid back version of Laid to Rest, especially with that same time signature, and then it picks up a little bit. It gets going, and that guitar solo that Alex brings in just roars on it. That's great, but then they kill the momentum just to go back into that riff while we're listening to more of the interview, and it's like, oh my god, okay, can we pick this up a little bit? And
it is a pretty long song, for an instrumental, but also for just, it's not like Orion where it changes up completely halfway through or anything like that. It's essentially the same song all the way through, just with soloing mixed within it. So
yeah, and it only changes during the soloing, which is what kind of frustrates me.
Right.
Or, and then, like I said, with What I've Become, again, it's not a bad song. It's just, in comparison to everything else, it's just too simplistic, which is weird for me to say, but, with this is Lamb of God, they don't do anything simplistic.
Yeah, well, it is kind of like that one is the one also, and Mark has said in this article that I was reading that one was really like punk rock for them, and I can see those influences. They were changing things up. I don't think he was super much a fan of that song either, so I don't blame you. I don't really care about it, if that makes sense. It's like, it's a good song, but yeah, I could just as easily take it or leave it. Speaking about negatives, what I don't really like, and maybe you'll get pissed at me, I have no idea, but I don't like those spoken passages, like at the beginning of Laid to Rest or Omerta, or in the middle of Blood of the Scribe there. I just don't. I think it sounds super cheesy. Randy's not a good actor.
You have to watch The Graves. Because he actually acts opposite Tony Todd. And he's pretty cool. He's pretty good in it.
Okay, well, maybe he learned some stuff.
And granted, that movie was after this album, so.
Yeah, I don't know. Just, they sound so cringy and just obvious.
Well,
I have nothing against the words, but I was like, I'd rather he kind of sing them a little or something. I don't know. It just doesn't sound good to me.
To be fair, live, they do a bit more, if there was a single day I could live, because he's trying to prep himself for the actual screaming. So he doesn't do the straight talking. So it's a little bit more oomph, a little more grit, a little more growl. So maybe they should have just done that for the record instead of just straight speaking. I personally love it. I also love how it's mixed in with into the record, which I think is one of the few strengths of mixing this record has. Because, like, from a producer standpoint, I'm actually not the biggest fan of this record out of their discography.
No, it's pretty.
I think the guitar tones sound fine, but nothing great. John disappears at times, and it's really frustrating. And Chris has great sounding, has one of the best sounding snare mixes in the business. Oh my god, I want every single song I have to have that snare sound. But I
There's really just no like soundstage to it. Randy's vocals are even kind of, mixed in a little too closely with the guitars. It's all very not compressed by compression, but I'm just saying like it's all compressed together as far as like there's not a lot that distinguishes it, which, I kind of appreciate at the same time because it gives it a sort of, dirty, dark, demonic sort of feel to it, and it kind of lends weight to the theme of this album, so I do get that, but I don't necessarily think that was their aim, nor should it be.
Yeah.
I think that if you were to remaster this, it would be interesting to see what you could do with a new mix.
And well, I mean, shit, it worked for As the Palaces Burn, because once they took that record, because my God, that is some of the best metal songs of the entire decade. But but then they gave it a mix that was a lot more like Sacrament. And holy shit, it's an apple and an orange, and that orange looks real effing great, and it sounds great. Okay, anybody who wants to make a Trump joke, do so in the comments. Anyway, sorry, because everyone wants to say call him orange. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you have a record like this, which granted is still pretty well mixed and good production value to it.
It's not difficult to listen to by any means.
But once you see where they go, you're just like, oh, why couldn't this record have just gotten to that point? Because like, while I will say that, like here, for example, if you do ever get around to listening to Sacrament in its entirety, you'll notice first right off the bat, the mix way better. It's more balanced. You hear everybody, but sure, the songwriting is just not as strong. Mm-hmm. Whereas as opposed to these last two records, but it's one of those things where it's just like, I wish this record could have gotten a little bit more attention. Just a little bit. And
maybe for like a 20th anniversary or something like that, we can hopefully see something like that, because I think that, again, like we're talking about with Sacrament, a good song or good songs or a good album can certainly make it through a bad mix and a bad master and just overall subpar production. But you could have the best production in the world. It could be clean as fuck. And if the songwriting is shit, it don't matter.
Bring Me the Horizon.
Because there's plenty of shitty set. Oh, wait. Oh, hey. Oh. We don't even talk about them on this podcast. Maybe just to talk shit, I guess, yeah. But the lyrical content is interesting because obviously, in case anybody doesn't know, I am conservative and I am /was/ will be again in the army. So, I didn't fight in the Iraq War. Obviously, I'm too fucking young. I just turned 25. Like, come on.
But the difference is like you were still around for the time, and
yeah, sure, yeah.
And technically the lyrics, they could be applied to the current still ongoing war on terror if you want to get super analytical with it. But
yeah, the way that it's all approached is obviously a lot differently. And well, what I wanted to kind of get to kind of steer it in a specific direction, that way we're just not like going crazy here. Because trust me, I could. But... And what I had talked to you before, you have songs like War Pigs, or even just, albums, such as Rust in Peace. And they do this where they're able to cover political / anti-war themes. And that's fine. They do it in a good way. And that's what I see this album as. It's their frustration at something that they know they don't understand, if that makes sense. Their frustration is with the fact that this exists and has to exist and does exist and how it's being handled, not with, like, the people and such. Because obviously, there's a lot of people that were obviously super disrespectful to soldiers coming back from Vietnam, blah, blah, blah. That's been discussed ad nauseum. But War Pigs has nothing to do with the soldiers or hatred of who was there.
It's about the establishment that was responsible for those soldiers going to war in the first place.
Exactly. And so that's what I get from this, and that's why, because you had said in a personal conversation, I don't mean to out you, but you're like, oh, conservatives hate this. I don't necessarily know that, because I think that there's, Mark said, again, same article, talking about a lot of veterans come up and say, like, this got me through that time, because, again, most veterans are definitely conservative, but there are certainly ones that are liberal. And, I think it's important to have music for both sides. And I think both sides can appreciate music like this, because nobody, or I'm not going to say nobody, but a lot of soldiers don't want to be in war all the time. I mean, it's your job, but at the same time, you understand that obviously the goal of the Army, like the reason, like our actual mission statement is to bring peace. Like that is what we are looking for, is finding and keeping peace. Now whether that happens or whether that ever will happen is, a song or a topic for Rust in Peace Polaris to talk about. It was like bombing the shit out of each other until nobody's left alive and we worship like nuclear gods and shit. But with this album, man, I don't hate it. As a conservative, I don't hate it, and I don't feel disrespected by it. I feel like it tackles the issues in a real, serious, adult way, instead of just being childish like my last fucking podcast where I talked about Thy Art is Murder coming out with Make America Hate Again. Like, you don't have to be a child about things. Like, come on, dude. You don't have to be a child. You can talk about things respectfully. And, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I am being hateful.
And that's kind of like part of the, that's kind of how it is with Lamb of God, because, they grew up, they're all from Richmond. So they have that Southern mentality and that Southern love for this country, but they're not afraid to call the man out on the man's shit, which again, it's one of the main reasons one of the reasons why I love the lyrics on this record, because I first got into it, like I said, around 2006 2007, and a lot of the crap that was going on, because I've had several cousins and close to family friends that have fought in Afghanistan, Iraq, and a couple of them didn't make it back. And like listening to this record actually, in a way helped me at least want to find out why they had to fight that war in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those beautiful things where I guess, when I stopped to think about it, this was one of the records that started me somewhat on making sure that I keep up to date with a lot of political events. Why I make sure I keep up to date with the going-ons of the world, because in some ways I still don't understand. And I don't think Lamb of God did fully either. But their frustration is 100% justified.
Right. Yeah, I think that
dead air.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I was kind of just collecting thoughts as far as I don't want to be hypocritical, because what I did say last week was I don't like most of the time when politics are brought into music, and it's like, well, what is most of the time? Do you just cherry pick here and there? And it's like, no, I mean, it's kind of just, music is an emotional medium. It's, when the emotion feels right and when it feels reasonable, that's when I appreciate it. And I think there are a lot of people that are like, get the fuck out of here, you Australian pieces of shit. I don't care what you think about American politics. And that's personally how I feel. And I don't need to hear Thy Art is Murder say we suck, because, you're not here.
Well,
if you're from,
that's the
if
thing,
you're from,
like, everybody says that, well, art shouldn't be political. Well, sorry to hate to break it to you, but all art is political, whether or not the creator of the art
all political, but
was doing it intentionally or not. That's open to the personal interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the music coming out of Trolls World Tour is very political. I'm just fucking with you, Chris.
I mean,
I'm just being a dick.
if you look hard enough, you could find something in there, I'm sure.
But I like having conversations. Like, I'm obviously super argumentative, you know? This isn't a surprise, you know? So I like having conversations, and I appreciate when, you know, people do call other people out on their bullshit. Like, I'm not gonna, you know, no one's always gonna agree with everyone. That's fucking impossible. But I think that when you approach it from the right way, it's good. And that is what I like about this album, to kind of bring things on track. Let's get things back on track. Let's finish this out. Here's what I want to know from you, Christopher Doman.
Oh, boy.
Do you think, because in 2018, we got a cover album by Burn the Priest, like they brought back the old name, the OG name, but do you think we're going to hear new Lamb of God music? Because the last thing they released was their 7th studio album,
Sturm und Drang.
Sturm und Drang. Yep, back in 2015. So it's been some years. What do you think? Will we hear more? He's not in jail, so that's good.
I want nothing more than a new Lamb of God record. I've wanted 3 new Lamb of God records in the past 3 years. Dear
Yeah,
God,
right.
I think the current political climate is ripe for a great Lamb of God record. But if I'm going to speak completely honestly, with the lineup of Randy Blythe, Mark Morton, Willie Adler, John Campbell, and Chris Adler, I don't see it happening. Because I feel like Chris is trying to distance himself at this point from the band, and it's breaking my effing heart.
Yeah.
He's making me go
It's
full
the worst.
Padme over here. But of course, I want a new record real badly, because Lamb of God are in my top 10 favorite bands of all time.
And I wonder, too, if, you know, they might get a little motivated by seeing bands such as, you know, okay, we got Killswitch Engage back at it again, like trying to release more music, and Slipknot, you know, I just wonder if maybe they get some, like, kind of a kick in the pants from these other bands. And, you know, there's money to be made for new Lamb of God. Trust me, there is money to be made. People are still listening to their stuff. I see it in the different, like, Facebook groups and on Twitter and stuff like that. I mean, people care about
I
this.
still don't have a session at the gym without at least one Lamb of God song playing.
So the fact that they're still very much in the public consciousness, you know, they released something not too long ago, but I would just prefer that it's like, oh, they don't, you know, release something in 2025 and it's like getting the band back together then. Because, you know, there is a shelf life for voices and for just band dynamics and for live shows too. Because, you know, my favorite band, Rush, they just don't sound that good live after like the late 80s. His voice, you know, Geddy's voice just did not hold up at all. I don't think he took very good care of it, but you know. So
And at first these guys didn't either. They've gotten better at it, but
yeah, and I think, you know, that is the thing about like metalcore, deathcore, blah blah blah. People are learning you definitely have to take good care of your voice. Like, look at Corey Taylor. You have to take good care of your voice if you want to stay healthy. So, but yeah, man, I hope we get something, because even though I don't know a lot about this band, I'm learning more. I'm doing my homework. And, you know, if there's anything that gets me into a band, it's them dropping new records, because you listen to the new stuff and then you go back and you're like, oh, this new stuff is good. I want to go back and find out about the classics. So if there's anything that'll motivate more people to find out more about them, I mean, you don't want the greats to go away. You never want the greats to go away.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, Chris, thanks so much for coming on and talking Lamb of God. This was a good one. We had some interesting conversations here. And, you know, we didn't have any arguments, so I'm proud of us.
Well, that's the thing. Like, when it comes to stuff like this, what's the point of even having an argument? Because
That's true.
There's just discussion. And there's
and that's what I love about the metal community, man, is like there's so much understanding.
Yeah. Well, okay. in the younger audiences, there's a lot of understanding.
True. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. If you're talking about like arguing about, yeah, I don't know. I think that when you get into like, oh well, nothing will ever be as good as Kiss 1985 era, then if you're an old guy like that, or like the uncles of the world,
Metallica,
with their
1986
male pattern baldness. which
to be fair, I mean, Master of Puppets is their best record ever, but
you shut your whore mouth, Chris. It's so good.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, because actually, just to get sidetracked again, because I think that this is what this episode is at this point. I saw a video. It was in another country, and I can't remember for sure, but I'm 99.9% sure it was Germany or a Germanic sort of country in that area, somewhere around there, Austria, Vienna, something. I don't know. But it was a huge crowd. Like, that's what makes me say, like, Germany or, like, some foreign country, because it was, like, a festival just packed, like, unbelievably huge. And in the middle, or, like, roughly around in the middle, there's a guy on an electric wheelchair being held up by the crowd above their heads, and he's like rocking out to the music, and it looks like he has cerebral palsy just based off of
I've seen this clip.
Yeah,
that's
it is
awesome.
just like, that's what makes me say things like the metal community is fucking awesome, man, because
so you go
down in the pit, unless you're one of these dumbass crowd killers, man. Like, if you go down in the pit, someone will pick you up.
It's the number one rule.
Yeah. Unless, like, you're a fucking crowd killer and you just don't care and you don't pick anyone up, then you suck. But most people will pick you up if you go down in the pit. And, like, I've known people to get, like, the worst, like, arms pulled out of their sockets, and, like, people are, like, shoving the socket back in. That was at, well, I don't even remember. It was, like, a not that great Christian metal band from back in the day.
Okay.
But anyway, sorry. I'll cut that out. I'll just cut that out.
No, keep it in.
Yeah. At this point, it's organic. It's in there. We're keeping it. Fuck it. We'll do it live. Fuck it. All right. So, yeah. Just the metal community. I'm so fucking proud of you guys. It's so great. It's so good. And I need to see more shows, man. Charlotte, man, just not enough shows coming out here. But
I need more time to be able to see more shows.
Oh, time, money, hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. There's never enough time or money in this world. But I'll keep going, and I'm looking forward to some new Lamb of God. I think we might get it. I'm predicting, calling it now.
I really hope
2069, new Lamb of God. They're in wheelchairs now. That's the spoiler. Randy Blythe has fucking oxygen hooked up just that way he can take breaths.
Hey guys, I just wanted to cut in here because there was actually a piece of news that came out that I want to talk about. And also, real quick, I want to say sorry that the audio wasn't that great for me this week. It was just kind of a mistake on my part, essentially. Like, sometimes I'll use, just the computer mic if I'm on the road and I can't bring all my good equipment with me, but I still want to get an episode out to you guys. But honestly, this time, the reason you're hearing not that great audio quality is just because I made a mistake and I clicked the wrong thing, or I don't know, just somehow basically my inputs got switched around on me and I didn't do a good job to like check it with a little bit of a test or anything like that. I kind of just went straight into the podcast because I didn't want to waste any time. I wanted to get right into it. So that's bad on me. Next week, I promise I'll be back with good audio. Not going to make any mistakes like that anytime soon because I'll definitely be pretty paranoid checking it to make sure. But yeah, next week should be fun. But real quick, I wanted to cut in and talk about today, actually. Well, today's Friday. I'm working on editing this episode so that I can put it out on Saturday. But they actually, Lamb of God, released a statement today saying that their live drummer is going to be joining them full time. So his name is Art. He's been with the band on their live tours for a little while. So all this to say, I mean, Chris Adler is out. Chris Adler is out following his accident that he had. Art Cruz is their live drummer. So this is the official announcement that was put out on Twitter. We'd like to officially welcome Art Cruz, who has been playing drums with us on tour for the last year as the new drummer of Lamb of God. Art will be joining us in the studio as we begin pre-production and recording of a new album. We're very proud of everything this band has accomplished over the last 2 decades. We would like to thank Chris Adler for his contributions over the years and wish him the best in his future endeavors. So Adler was absent from the summer 2018 tour, or rather, when his absence from that tour was announced, he had released a statement saying he'd been undergoing physical and occupational therapy for injuries from a motorcycle accident and towards the end of 2017. So this is interesting because Chris is out, Art Cruz is in, and we're gonna get an all new Lamb of God album without Chris Adler. Dear Lamb of God fans, we returned last week from a great European festival run and our final tour with Slayer in North America. We're excited to keep the momentum going and dive into the next record. We'd like to officially welcome Art Cruz. And that's where, so I missed out on that first part. I just wanted to read that again. Kind of for myself, just as much as anybody. I mean, man, I'm actually kind of disappointed that Chris is busy right now. Otherwise, I would get his take on this. But I already know he's not going to be thrilled when I am able to talk to him about it. I know he's not going to be thrilled at all. And man, it's kind of sad to see. It's kind of sad to see, but if he's not able to play and he's hindering the band, it makes sense that they're going to have to cut him out of it, because if he can't do his job, I mean, his job is to play music. They obviously want to start a new album. They want to get going on a new album. So what do you do at that point? What can you do at that point? Really, the only option that you're left with is to say, hey, can't do it. I don't know if necessarily they need to kick him out of the band. That seems kind of extreme. I feel like he could still help write music and still be a part of the process. Like when Get Good, or whatever his damn name is, left Periphery, he still helped them record Hail Stan. So Adam, or whatever, it's late right now. I can't think. And I'm also kind of in shock about this. I mean, I just found out about this like right before I sat down to start editing, and I was like, oh, should I say something? Shouldn't I? I mean, this podcast is definitely running long. So if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. And, congrats to you, I guess. What do you want, a medal? But this is big news. They are coming out with more music, and it's not going to be with Chris Adler on the drums. So I'm not going to ramble. I just wanted to, get that information out there, do my due diligence for anybody who's listening, and that's insane to me. It makes sense. I don't know if necessarily is the right answer, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this next week, because I definitely want to get some of Chris's thoughts on this. There's a lot to talk about here. But yeah, new Lamb of God. At least there's some good news with the bad news. So, like I was saying earlier in the podcast, man, I'm always hopeful for people to drop new music, because if I don't know them that well and I'm getting to know them, one of the easiest ways to get to know them is to see where they started and where they've ended up, and then you kind of just fill in the blanks in between. So them coming out with a new record probably sometime in 2020, if I had to guess, 2020 or 2021, that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. But anyway, I'm going to switch back over to the pre-recorded stuff and go ahead and close this podcast out. So thanks for listening, guys.
But thanks, Chris, for coming on to this absolutely insane podcast. Where can the good kids find you?
You guys can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Stardust, Letterboxd, and Discord at Skywalker at Home. And you guys can follow this very channel on Twitter and Instagram at D2H Channel. Please like our Facebook page. And don't forget to check out the sister podcast, Who Cares Anyway, hosted by me, where our last episode, we asked all you guys, all the fans, to submit to me a personal ranking of each Walt Disney animated film. And I took them and we compiled a list. And if you want to know where your favorite movies wound up, go listen to it. What came out on top? Was it Lion King? Was it Hunchback? Was it Moana? Was it Pinocchio?
Was it The Princess and the Frog?
Actually, so obviously
a great movie.
Quick side note here. So we're recording this. We recorded this episode before that episode gets dropped, and I haven't finalized the lists. But Princess and the Frog is actually looking pretty high.
Whoa! I mean, Randy Newman, man. There's some good fucking music in there. But yeah, check out Who Cares Anyway, guys. We have so much fun on those shows. Really, like, it's always a blast, and it always sucks when school and work get in the way. So I won't be on that episode. Oh well. But I still have opinions. It should be Lion King. But anyway, guys, thanks so much for listening. This has been one hell of an episode. Next week, I think we're going to get back into a little bit more deathcore. So we'll see what it is, though. There's a couple episodes that I have my eye on. A couple albums, so we'll see what it is. But thanks so much, guys, for listening. And until next time, see you in the pit.